Hey everybody, it's me again, and I want to address the second question that has been coming to me from a lot of my Ukrainian friends. And this is a more serious question, I think. I mean, the last one was pretty serious, but this is the nuclear question. The Putin and Lavrov have both hinted about the possibility of using nuclear weapons in this conflict in retaliation for the Western countries sending help to the Ukrainian military, and also for Lavrov said that the sanctions were a type of total war, and or something to that effect, the other day, and he hinted that the sanctions might provoke a nuclear response. Now I'm not sure, like I don't even know where to start with this. I guess I could start with a brief overview of the nuclear forces of Russia. I should say that I worked for a couple years, 3 years, as a START treaty inspector. I conducted something like 21 inspections of Russian and American military bases under the New START treaty, and been all over Russia and been to a lot of places in America. And basically you have three different, well, I guess we could say four different types of nuclear weapons. The main three of the strategic variety are land-based, air-based, and sea-based. The sea-based are the ones that are on the ballistic missile submarines, and the advantage of those is that, in theory, nobody knows where those submarines are, and so they can't be stopped from launching because nobody knows where they're at except for the commander of the submarine. The second is the land-based, which in Russia consists of shaktovые установки, or silos, where the missiles are buried in the ground, covered with several feet of steel and concrete. They also have the quasi-portable missiles in the transporter erector launchers, which are somewhat mobile, although they're not mobile very quickly. And then the last one is your air-based, which are going to be cruise missiles launched from their long-range bombers. Now, the fourth category you have are tactical nuclear weapons, which are lower yield, but still massive. I mean, these are, you're looking at yields comparable to the largest conventional munitions that we have today. We actually have, by we I mean humanity, actually has conventional munitions today that are comparable in power to the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. And Russia, in all probability, has those as well, that could be delivered in a variety of ways. But I don't see any end game for this scenario where Russia wins. It is my view that Russia has already lost. These sanctions are going to do such tremendous damage to the Russian economy that it will take many, many years for them to recover once the sanctions are lifted, and who knows when that's going to be. If they use nuclear weapons in a conflict like this, the sanctions could last for a very long time. There is no end game in this where Russia wins. Ukraine has already won. We're just watching Russia die very slowly right now. Their military is falling apart, and while every day the Ukrainian military is growing and the resolve of the people to resist this Russian attack is hardening, And Russia's been completely unable to break the spirit of the Ukrainian people. So, why would Putin use nuclear weapons? Well, Putin is in danger of losing Russia right now. He cannot afford to lose this conflict and maintain his leadership in the Russian Federation. A big part of Putin's personality is him being viewed as strong, and that Russia has the standing, of being viewed as a strong nation on the world stage. And after this Ukrainian conflict, Ukraine was the second poorest nation in Europe when this conflict started. And nobody, looking at the comparative size of the Russian and the Ukrainian army, looking at the types of equipment that they had, the number of soldiers that they had, the amount of experience those soldiers had, especially the officer corps. Russia is basically one of those countries that is continuously involved in some sort of conflict all over the world. And Ukraine is not. Ukraine has built their army from nothing, basically in the last 8 years. So on paper, Russia should have been able to stomp right through Ukraine with no problems at all, but that's not happening. And Vladimir Putin is shocked by this. Russia is shocked by it. Vladimir Putin's intelligence was either he wasn't reading his intelligence or they just got it completely wrong. I think he started to believe his own propaganda. He started to believe that, Ukraine actually was some sort of Nazi fascist regime, that the people would welcome the Russians as liberators, but nothing could be further from the truth. And Zelensky has played this, played every card in his hand perfectly, while Putin has wasted every card that he had, and played an extremely poor game so far. This is a really terrible thing to call a game, but it is, and Russia's losing. So what Putin has to do right now is break the spirit of the Ukrainian people. And I think that in his head, maybe he thinks that using a nuclear weapon will do that. I think he's wrong. I don't think he'll hit Kiev because he needs to be able to take Kiev in order to install this new government. His narrative of what's going on here falls apart if he has to use a nuclear weapon on Kiev, but he might use one on one of the smaller Ukrainian cities to say, see, this is what will happen if you don't submit, if you don't surrender. That's not going to work. I think it's just going to make the Ukrainian people hate him more. And if he was to do something like that, he's only got a handful of countries in the world, all of them rather insignificant, that are still supporting him. And their support will evaporate if he uses nuclear weapons. The sanctions will last for years, maybe longer, maybe decades, if he does that. And he had better be really, really careful about it. He's not going to be able to launch any of his strategic nuclear weapons without provoking an immediate response from the West, because that's the only kind of response there is when you're dealing with nuclear weapons, is a total response. So all that's left to him is tactical. I don't think that Vladimir Putin wants to destroy Russia. I think he already has, but going into the realm of nuclear would take it to a different level. Right now, Russia's economy is in tatters, but it can be rebuilt. If they were to, if Russia was to depose Putin and all of his cronies and install a legitimate democratic government with, freedom of speech and freedom to protest without these ridiculous censorship laws, Russia has a decent chance of rebuilding their economy in a modern, and becoming a member of the modern community of nations. But they won't be able to do it with Putin. And all of this hinges on Putin's paranoia and his delusions and hallucinations. Now, it's not just, some of people ask me, is he going to push the button? Well, there isn't a button. I hate to break it to you, but it's a lot more complicated than that. It's not the decision of just one person. Like I said, he's not going to use silo-based or submarine-based. He's going to use something based out of an aircraft, which means that there's going to be pilots involved. There's going to be ground crew involved. And quite frankly, there are a lot of people in the chain of command that can stop that order from happening after, even if Putin did give the order. There are plenty of places in the chain of command to stop it. The last of which would be, of course, the anti-aircraft defense in Ukraine, which is still up and operating. And there were 2,700 more anti-aircraft anti-aircraft man pads sent from Germany today, and more on the way from every other country. So I don't think that the nuclear option is something that we really need to worry about. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Russia is going to collapse before there's an option for it to happen. I think we're seeing the collapse in slow motion, right? It might seem like slow motion right now, but it's only been a week. Their military is not what Putin thought it was. And Ukraine is much more than Putin gave it credit for. And the Ukrainian people are strong. And I think it's just a matter of time. I think things are going to get a little bit worse, but I've read some estimates from, most notably from the former defense minister of, I think it was Latvia. He's now a member of the European Parliament, where he said that, Russia's only got a few days worth of cruise missiles left, and after that all it is artillery and small arms. And it's going to be months before they can resupply, if they are even able to, what with all the sanctions, because Russia doesn't make a lot of the parts, or doesn't have the ability to make the electronics and stuff that go into these high-tech weapon systems. So they're going to be left with artillery and small arms, which isn't nothing, but it's something that's beatable. And I talked in my last video about how that column outside of Kiev might seem very threatening, and it might seem like a lot of vehicles, but it's also very vulnerable. And given that the Ukrainians seem to have really good intelligence of what's going on, I think that they're going to be able to throw a wrench into the works and disrupt whatever plans are happening there. I saw that drone show where they in Kiev the other night, and I was thinking that maybe another drone show would be nice, where they could spell out some words in the sky using a bunch of LED drones, and just say, Russian troops, you can surrender. We'll give you some hot borscht and a warm bed, and you'll survive the war. And if you don't surrender, we're going to cover you with Molotov cocktails and Panzerfaust and javelins. So, and I bet that enough of those Russian soldiers would take that offer because they just want to go home. But keep your spirits up, folks. I don't see any way in which Russia wins this war. And I have a lot of faith that it's going to be over soon. 7 to 10 days. And the Russian invasion is going to fall apart. So stay strong. Support Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Героям слава.